guest and truly wonderful person, the one and only Pocketfox, who I am sure many of you already know. Pocketfox is one of my favorite people to talk about music with, which is where this video sort of stems from. We kind of met each other through talking about music, and Pocketfox has introduced me to so many cool albums and artists like Car Seat Headrest and Stereo Lab and Vampire Weekend, and some of my favorite albums of last year were ones that Pocketfox introduced me to. And so I thought it would be really cool and fun to do a video where the both of us talk about some of our favorite albums, and hopefully you all can come away with some recommendations while also getting a hopefully very relaxing, maybe tingly video out of it. So, without further ado, I'm going to let Pocketfox take it away with their top 3 favorite albums of all time.
Hello everyone, it's Pocketfox here, and today I'm going to be talking about 3 of my favorite albums. And first I just want to give a thank you to my good friend Cal, who set this up and had the idea to do this, which is super fun. So thank you, Cal. He is a great friend of mine. We often nerd out quite a bit about music and Dark Souls and other things. And yeah, he is awesome. So thank you. So the first of 3 albums I want to talk about is my favorite album of all time, which just came out last year. But I have never had an album so consistently in rotation in terms of listening to, because I swear I listened to this thing like once a week since it came out, and I never get sick of it, which is a feat because it is 2 hours long. So yeah, not the most accessible album, but I adore this thing so much. It is beautiful. It is stunning. Like, the guitar tones on this album sound so amazing. They just hit my ears in the best way. A lot of it is very distorted and fuzzy, and some of it isn't. But like, no matter where you land on this album, the guitar consistently sounds just perfect. And it's kind of surprising because the first time I heard this album, I was just like, oh yeah, it's like nice background music. But the more you listen to it, the more the tracks stand out to you. And every single song on this thing has something that I love and that I find addicting, and so I keep coming back to it. And like, I'll put on the first song and I'll just be like enamored by it, and then that song will end and the next one will start and I'm like, oh, I love this one too. And then it keeps going like that until literally the end of the album. Like, just literally start to finish, I am just enraptured passed away, and it's very hazy, like, and psychedelic. It somehow simultaneously feels like you are like in another dimension from the music, and like just it sounds like the music is just far off and wrapped in like some kind of shroud, but at the same time it also just sounds so personal, and it sounds like a guy, you know, sitting on a stool at the corner of the bar, just like plucking away on their guitar and with like a distant stare, you know, like it sounds so mystical but also just so grounded. And like I just love it. I cannot praise this album enough. I know that it has gotten a lot of praise already, but I swear I still feel like I feel like I'm the only one that is just just thinks of this album as like an absolute masterpiece. But yeah, that is that album. The next album I want to talk about was my favorite album of all time for a while, and it is by my favorite band of all time, which is Stereo Lab, and they are quite prolific. They have a lot of amazing albums, but the one I love the most and the one I highly recommend is called Dots and Loops. Dots and Loops and Loops by Stereo Lab. It is an electronica album from 1997, and it is just their absolute best. Like, it really feels like this album was made by like a musical genius. Like, at least to me, it sounds like they have like, you know, like 8 bars of just the tightest groove imaginable. is very, very indebted to a retro sound, which personally I'm not like a huge fan of that. Like, I typically gravitate towards music that sort of pushes the envelope and does something new. Like, usually when I hear something that just sounds like an older sound or genre or even artist, I'm just like, well, that's like, it seems too easy. But with this album in particular, I swear it just absolutely nails the sound, and I think does it better than like anything I've heard in the past. It is incredibly detailed. Like, just off the top of my head, the song What's Your Pleasure, just like in the chorus you can just hear ever so faintly in the background just an electric guitar just like absolutely wailing, and it's so in the background, but like it's just full of tiny details like that where like you listen to it and it's just like, wow, like there's just, it sounds so full, but at the same time like there's nothing that is there that shouldn't be there, you know? Like it sounds effortless. I think that's a good way to put it. It sounds very simple. Like, a lot of times there'll just be, you know, drums, bass, and a synth just playing like a simple melody, but it gets so much more filled out, and oh my god, the vocals and the lyrics are just, I love them so much. Jessie Ware has like just a voice that is just made for dance music. That's what I feel. And the lyrics are just so sexy and intimate, and just like it just feels like very like almost like conveying like a primal sense of longing and lust for, you know, whoever is the recipient. And it sounds simple. It's one of those albums that just sounds so simple. Like, even the lyrics they're simple. They're not like insanely poetic or anything, but they just convey exactly what they're supposed to. And it also just sounds so good. It is a dance album. It personally, I'm not like a clubber or a partier or anything like that, but this album sounds like the best clubbing night out that you could ever have. Like, it's just like, bah, like perfect. So I feel like I've been rambling on for a little too long, and I apologize to Cal because he has already heard me gush about 2 of these 3 albums already. But you know, these are 3 of my favorites, and they are albums that I highly, highly recommend. I don't really think any of them are like very inaccessible. Like at the very least, I feel like even if you don't fully vibe with them, they'll all at least make for like good background music. Like, they're very pleasant to listen to. Some of the music I like is kind of not at all like that. So I did want to pick some albums that I think would just go over well for the majority of people. So yeah, thank you for watching, and thanks again, Cal, for letting me ramble on for a while, and I hope you all have a fantastic night, and sleep tight, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.
So, first album I want to talk about is sort of the album that got me into albums, so to speak. I used to think that listening to an album in full was very daunting. It seemed like a big undertaking to listen to a full 10 songs by this one artist front to back. It seemed like too much. And then I came across this album, which is Funeral by Arcade Fire. I first heard this album back in 2020, and I had known like one or two Arcade Fire songs. The main song I knew was called The Suburbs, which is also a great song. And because I like that song a lot, I'm like, maybe I should start kind of checking out more music from this artist. And so I put on their album Funeral, and I started listening to the first song, and then the second song, and then the third, and then I just couldn't stop myself from listening to the rest because it was so good. And I listened to this album excessively because it was really like the first album I really, really loved front to back. It was amazing to me. The album is sort of like, I guess it's kind of a very broad, general term and kind of vague, but it's like indie rock, you know, kind of. There's definitely a lot of like rock influences, and then also, I guess, some folk as well, a little bit, with having like a lot of acoustic instrumentation, like the violin, they have the accordion, the piano, but you also have those rock elements with the electric guitars going as well. Yeah, so I fell in love with this album right from the first song, which is Neighborhood Number 1, Tunnels, and that I think is my favorite song on the album. It gets me really emotional. It's really beautiful. It starts with these just like really quiet, soft, twinkling keys, and by the time we reach the chorus of it, the lead singer, Win Butler, is just like laying everything out there. He is giving just such like a raw, emotional vocal performance. It leaves me floored every single time. My other favorite on the album is In the Back Seat, which is the closer. It's kind of funny. My favorites are the opener and the closer on the album. But this In the Back Seat is definitely the saddest on the album, and kind of gives the I'm trying to think of what I'm trying to say here. It kind of gives the album its title, I guess, in that it's called Funeral. This album, or this song in particular, is definitely about death and growing up. So it's definitely a sad one. Very touching, but I love it. And it also has the lead singer's wife singing on it, Regine. And on the chorus again, she's giving it her all, and I just love it so much. But if there is actually a song I'd recommend off of it, I probably wouldn't recommend those two. They're still great, and you can't go wrong with those. But I would absolutely recommend the song Wake Up, because it is like the most anthemic song. It'll immediately hit you. I think it's so hard not to like it. It's got these wonderful group vocals throughout it. And the switch up in the back half of the song gets me every time. It feels a little dancier, almost like a little celebration at the end. Yeah, I love it so much. I saw them play live in 2022, and I think I have to say Wake Up was my favorite song that they played. I think it was the last song that they played. It was just like a really, really excellent way to close off the show. Yeah, I really can't recommend Arcade Fire enough. Their earlier output is really, really good. Like, their first, 3 or 4 albums are excellent. I would not necessarily recommend their next 2. They're still okay, but, not as good said, it's definitely the case that Funeral, their first album, is their best for sure. But yeah, very much so recommend Funeral by Arcade Fire. The next album I want to talk about is called Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots by the Flaming Lips. Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots by the Flaming Lips. Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots by the Flaming Lips. I feel like the name of this album is a little deceptive because it sounds like it's going to be kind of goofy. I honestly thought that when I was a lot younger. I first came across one of the songs on this album when I played Rock Band 3 when I was probably 14 years old or something. I'm not quite sure how old I was. But I played the title track on the album, Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots Part 1. And I thought that the song was kind of like a joke. I thought it was really just goofy and dumb. I was like, who listens to it? This is just weird music. And then I got older and I realized that I was completely wrong. And this song and this album has such emotional depth that I just never really realized or picked up on because my silly little kid self was not really too smart. Yeah, this album can be really sad at times, but I also feel like it has a lot of hope in its sad moments. It never feels like a hopeless, depressing sort of sadness. It feels very much so yeah, life can be sad, but there are a lot of great, wonderful, happy moments to go along with it. The album itself touches a lot on love and death and standing up for yourself. Definitely the standing up for yourself can be seen on the title track Fight Test, which is one of my favorites on the album again. Definitely kind of cliche topics, but I think they execute these topics in a very, very satisfying way. Of course, so many things touch on love and death and stuff, but I think the way they do it and they deliver some really heart-wrenching moments that, and then also immediately follow it up with that feeling of hope. I think that can really be seen on the song Do You Realize, which is probably the song I would recommend anyone start with. I think it's their most popular song. That one has made me cry many times. I actually saw the band live last year, and it's one of my favorite shows I've ever been to, and they played this album front to back. And Do You Realize, when it came on, I did end up crying during the show. I ended up crying a couple times. I can be an emotional guy when music I love comes on. But yes, I would very much so recommend starting with Do You Realize. The album itself, sound-wise, it's considered to be neo-psychedelia, which, when it comes to subgenres of music, I get a little confused as to all the meanings. To me, my interpretation is it draws off of psychedelic rock music of the past, which uses distortion and stuff and is kind of drugged out in a way. I think the neo-psychedelia element is the addition of electronic instrumentation. It's a little bit poppier. This album in particular uses a lot of acoustic instrumentation as well, which is a really, really cool blend with these like electric guitars and then these hits of synth coming in. It just creates a very unique sound that is so specific to the Flaming Lips. It feels like something only they could make, which I love so much. I love the Flaming Lips. They're one of my favorite bands ever. And their album before this, The Soft Bulletin, is another one of my favorites, but I'm not going to go into that one. I have a different album to talk about last. So that last album is Ants From Up There by Black Country New Road. Ants From Up There by Black Country New Road. Ants From Up There by Black Country New Road. Also, all of these albums, I feel like at one point or another were like I considered to be my favorite. Each one has kind of edged the other one out at some point or another. I would probably say Ants From Up There is my favorite of these three, but sometimes, depending on the day, I might like Yoshimi the best, because I adore that album. I'm also now realizing, too, that a lot of my favorite albums are kind of these, like, slower, sad, indie rock albums. This one, Ants From Up There, is as well. But I guess that's what I like the most. So this album it came out the most recently of the three, with this one releasing in 2022. As I said before, very broad category, but it is indie rock, I suppose. And the reason I love this album so much is because of the lead singer, Isaac Wood. Unfortunately, he has now left the band to focus on his mental health. But so we only really got 2 albums from this band with him on them. But I'm so glad we were able to get those 2, because this is like the most amazing piece of music to me. And what's really special about Isaac's voice is that he is not a traditionally good singer. Like, I think a lot of people listen to his voice and go like, yeah, that's a very weird, odd voice. Like, that's not a good singing voice. And they are absolutely correct. Like, yes, it is not a great singing voice, but it's one of my favorite singing voices in music, and it's because it's so full and rich with emotion. Like, every word he sings, you can tell he feels it and he really means it on each one. He has this like really deep, quivery voice. Oh my god, I love it so much. I'm so sad he's not currently part of the band. I still love the band, and the new music they're putting out is great. Each of the band members now kind of takes part in singing songs, but I think when Isaac was leading the band, it was just amazing. Again, this is another band with some very grand instrumentation here. They have a saxophone, they have a piano, they have a violin, along with your other regular rock mainstays, drums, electric guitar, bass, the usuals. And they really use that grand instrumentation as best as they can, and it works so well. They create a lot of these really, really climactic builds, these slow builds that just explode at the end into this dense wall of sound. I think one of the best songs it can be seen on, and it's my favorite song of all time, is Basketball Shoes. Very long song. It's like 12 minutes and 30 seconds. But if you skip to, I think around the 9-minute 30-second mark, you can hear the slow build and then get absolute wall of sound that they hit you with, and they keep on making that wall even more dense and full. It's extravagant. It's crazy. It's wonderful. But yeah, Basketball Shoes, great song. Highly recommend. Another song you can like see it on is Concord, which I think is one of the most popular songs on the album. Very much so. A slow build for like the first 5 minutes of the song, with some really emotional deliveries from Isaac. And then at the end, like the last minute, hits you with this very emotional wall of instrumentation. They're just so excellent at creating these builds. They're unlike anything I've heard before. If you kind of are more of like a straightforward rock song enjoyer, I would highly recommend Good Will Hunting or Chaos Space Marine. These are more upbeat, a little less depressing than some of the other songs. I would say this is probably the most sad album of the bunch that I've shared. If you want something a little more on the sad end, The Place Where He Inserted the Blade or Bread Song are two that will be kind of downers in a good way, Sometimes you have to listen to some sad music. Sometimes you might want to feel a little sad, and that's okay. It's okay to feel sad from time to time. But yeah, this is an album that I feel like I could listen to forever. It's my most listened to album of all time according to Spotify. And every time I listen to it, it feels so fresh. Like I feel like I'm listening to it for the first time almost. I get that same level of excitement that I did from my first listen. I really feel jealous of people who can come into this album for the first time. I wish I could relive that first listen again. It's just that good. I love it. I know I'm like overly gushing about this album, but I feel like it's so warranted on this one. Like, this one deserves all the love and praise. I love it so much, and it might not be for everyone. I know it might not be for everyone, and that's okay. I love it, and if you don't love it, that's fine. If you don't love any of these albums, I totally get it, because especially since I shared very kind of similar albums, I definitely dabble in other genres, trust me. I like myself some rap, I love myself some metal, I love some folk and stuff. I think just my favorites fall maybe in that indie rock sort of category, I suppose. But anyway, I want to give a big thank you again to Pocketfox. They are amazing, they are wonderful, and they are so kind to be willing to do this video, and I just love talking about music with them. They have such great music takes. But anyway, I hope you all have